Welcome to the MuseCast. One of the benefits that Osheta and I have because of being on the cast is we get to see Dan's little shenanigans when he's getting ready for us to start. And so you guys, this morning he gave us the double fingers, and I'm sorry you missed it, but I just showed you what it was. We're glad that you are here today. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Shawna. And as usual, we have Dan Kent and Osheta Moore, and we are going to continue the conversation from Sunday's sermon. We got to hear from Beth Leitch. Dan's going to give us a great summary. We're going to ask some questions and just talk about what we thought about it and just dig a little deeper. So welcome. We're glad you're here. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
Best cast around, I tell ya. I think we just saw a bird fly by my window, like a shadow of a bird. So
that's hilarious.
Nature is alive today.
This show is so good. We've got birds flying by our windows trying to get a piece of it. So
that's right.
A part of it.
They want a part of the action. Osheta's dog was just running around, wants to be in on the action. So we're a very popular show.
Amongst the animals.
Amongst the animals, right?
Yes, exactly. All right, Dan. Work your magic. Tell us about Beth Leitch's sermon.
Yeah, first of all, boy, Beth brings a different style to the pulpit than what we're used to, and I love that. I love that variety and a different sort of presentation. And she can tell a story, and she had a lot of emphasis in drama, and it was really great to have her. And the other thing too about Beth, and you could really see it in this message that she shared, she is like soaked in Woodland Hills theology. And really this sermon sort of summarized a lot of kind of what Woodland Hills has been about for so long. And so I love that. But her kind of point, we're still on the salt and light part of the Sermon on the Mount. And she really emphasized that God wants us to live as the salt and the light that we are. And that's what God has always wanted. And she kind of shows that God has always wanted us to live into the salt and light by going all the way back to creation through the Old Testament covenants, and just showing how this is what God's call has always been, for us to be salt and light to the rest of the world, that we were to be a distinct people, and that we were to shine our distinct light, that is the light of God, onto a world that lives in darkness. And she really sort of set up base on the story of Abraham. And I really liked how she talked about, when God is talking with Abraham and they look up at all of the stars, and God promises Abraham, this is going to be your descendants, as many stars as you can count. That's what your descendants are going to be. And of course, that's just an infinite amount of stars. But the idea that each of those stars is one of Abraham's descendants means that each of those stars, each of those little specks of glorious light, are us. Like, we're each a speck of glorious light. And that brings it so beautifully to the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus tells us to let our light shine on others, and don't cover that light, and to pour our light onto others. And so she really kind of talked about living into this reality of who we are. And that's and there's so many things that she talked about in this sermon. It was sort of a whirlwind of different things that she was sort of juggling as she went through this salt and light narrative. And so I know I missed a lot of stuff, but that's sort of my 2-minute synopsis of the sermon.
Yeah. There's so much that we could pull from, and a couple of the things that kind of drew me in, that I thought we could talk about today, was the whole idea of blessing. Throughout the Old Covenant, the Old Testament covenants, and the proclamations of blessing upon God's people, and how today, as God's people, I don't know that we recognize the blessings that we live in, because we are so mired in the reality of what we see going on around us. But also on the flip side, I thought, man, because we are blessed. We are a blessed people of God as his children, but we are blessed so that we can also shine a blessing upon others. And so that was something that I continue to mull around in my heart. Like, how am I, as a kingdom person, blessing others in this distinct, particular moment in time and history that I find myself living in? And so I thought that was an interesting challenge. And then just the whole idea that we've even talked about several times, I feel like on the MuseCast and just at Woodland and in our various conversations amongst staff and pastors, is, you know, we are kingdom people because of the good news of Jesus. And so that should be an excitement to those. They should look like a city on a hill. They should look and be awed by the goodness that they see and the love that's shining out and the way in which we're caring for people. And I am going to guess that that's not the overall attitude of non-believers or disenfranchised believers when they look at believers as a whole. I think there's been a lot of damage there to our witness and our reputation. Just some of my thoughts. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think,
Those are good thoughts.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
The thing that I keep coming back to, and I was really glad that Beth Leitch shared about this or talked about it, was the concept of covenant. And I think covenant is one of those things that I will be refining my knowledge on and like daily making a commitment to, my covenant to God and my covenant to others, until the day I die. Because I think it's so foundational to why we live this countercultural way. And so I really appreciated her kind of walking us back through the covenant that God made with Abraham and then like connecting it to Jesus. And I also think that that's part of us living into the new covenant, is that like we want to be disciples of Jesus. We want to live this countercultural way. We want to reflect the love of Jesus as demonstrated on the cross because of covenant, because God made that covenant with us, not because we want to be good people or we want people to think that we're good or we want to show off like what we have, or we like none of these like surface things that I think oftentimes people confuse with Christianity, that, you know, that we're just people with really good morals, or we're people that just do really good things, or that we have like high standards of righteousness or whatever. But like actually like what it means to be a disciple of Jesus is to be so aware of our covenant and to live into that covenantal love with God, and then it kind of flows out to others. So yeah.
Well, and you just said something, Osheta, that Beth Leitch, you know, Osheta, you know, I want to just say Beth. Like, I just want to just call her Beth.
I know.
I think I did that. I think I did do that.
Oh, it's a very Southern thing, but it's all right. Beth Leitch, I will say it all. One of the things that she pointed out in the beginning, and it was kind of a thorough thread throughout her sermon, was the fact that this isn't just about doing good deeds. So being in covenant with the Father, living in covenant amongst one another as believers, isn't just about doing good deeds. And so my question to you guys is, okay, so it's not just about that. It's not just about having some moral standards and a sense of righteousness, which I kind of even want to gag when I say it like that.
Yeah, for sure.
But we are called to be a people that brings goodness to others and calls out the goodness in others that they may not be aware of or see in themselves, because of what God has said about them, not because of our opinion. This is what has God ascribed to them, and we are called to come alongside and call that out. So what is the difference there? What is that nuance between just doing good deeds and being a person that brings the goodness of the kingdom to others, to their community, to their city, to their world?
Well, I can jump in, and then Dan, I want to hear your thoughts. But so if you're familiar with the Enneagram at all, then when I say I'm a 2 on the Enneagram, then that will mean something for you, that like I'm a helper, and I really thrive on doing good. Like I really, really like find my connection to others in the things that I can do for them. And one of the things that I've learned that I think answers this question, at least for me, and like the particular personality type that I have, I'm a woman, I'm a caregiver, I'm a shepherd, like all these things. Really it comes down to my intention and my open-handedness in the good that I do. So like if I am doing something in order to be seen, it's kind of like, don't let your right hand see what your left hand is doing. If I'm doing something to be seen, I'm doing something for validation, I'm doing something because I should. And there's this like anxious anxiety, this anxiety that goes along with it. That if I don't get the reaction or the response that I want, then I feel like it was a waste of my time. Why am I even doing this? And then also there's an open-handedness that just being good, like not doing good, but like just letting like natural goodness flow out of me towards others, where I really am interested in like, what will make you come alive? What do you actually need in this moment? Like, what can I bring that actually like meets your most deepest felt need, and not like what I feel comfortable giving or what I want other people seeing me do. And I think for me, the goodness is really other-centered. It's centered in my belovedness and centered in Christ, so I can give out of a place of being centered around others, like focus on them, as opposed to a lot of times when I just do good, it's like, well, I know that I can like make a really great casserole, so I'm going to bring you a casserole, even if like maybe you don't need that, like you just need me to sit on your porch and pray with you. So that for me is the distinction, is like the intentionality and the open-handedness and the focus. Is it on myself or on others? Is it what God is leading me to do or what I want to do? That's how I determine that.
That is so good, Osheta. And Dan, I know you're thinking right now, I want a casserole.
That's what I was getting. No, you can make a good casserole, huh? Prove it.
I do. I make a good casserole.
Yeah. Well, that was really well said. I think I would kind of jump into on that same thing where, not letting your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And I think that really kind of gets at, I think, the heart of the distinction, which is, when you're doing good, you can make a lot of social capital off of doing good. And look at all of these corporations who have these fundraisers and these special events, and that helps they have a whole PR department that's just dedicated to showing the world what a good company they are, even though they might be destroying rainforests and clogging the sewages and whatever. I mean, they could do all sorts of things, but look at these good things we're doing, and there's all sorts of ways that we can manipulate others into thinking that we're something that we're not. And I think that's what Jesus wants is I don't care about doing these things if you're just doing these things as if it's like a checklist, or as if you're just trying to show people something. I just want you to be this. I want you to really care. And I think that's where the Pharisees, that's the poison, the death of the Pharisees, is their whitewashed tombs. John says, or Jesus says in Matthew 23. And that is they're beautiful on the outside. Look at all the good things that they supposedly do, but their hearts are just judgmental, and it's not what God wants. Even though they do all of these good things, it's not. They're off. They're missing the mark in a central, profound way. And keeping the law just for the sake of keeping the law, it's a really nasty, addicting type of death that Jesus is, I think, calling us out of.
Yeah. So well said, both of you. So what can be done? What should be done to change that narrative, like, of being the person who piously, like, look at me, I'm doing these good things because of Jesus, and just being good and doing good? And I don't want to, I'm not trying to bash the church as a whole, but I do think, like I said earlier, I think when people look at us, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, like when someone finds out you're a Christian or a believer, they immediately, like, their walls go up, their defenses go up. That shouldn't be the case. Like, I'm not coming after you to tear you down. But for some reason, I feel like I have to jump over all of these preconceived hurdles and people's idea to even begin to relate, human to human. And so what should be done to kind of change the narrative? We can't do it for everyone, but we can do it, as individuals, and then as a body and as a church, and then hopefully that can grow and change. I think that's what we're trying to do anyway with who we are. as a church?
That's a good question. Well, I'll take a stab at it.
Go ahead.
I would say really this passage I think gets at it, because I think part of the what turns people off about the church is the self-righteousness and the presumption of having this moral truth or being morally superior to others. And I think, and this is sort of what I'm going to talk about in 2 weeks, sort of the problem there is that we tend to think that light is just about having the right beliefs, and bringing the light means bringing the truth, and which is like this propositional sort of belief based thing, and this is the right conduct, these are the right beliefs, and so I think that that's very a lot of times that's very idealistic, this moral purity, and that's what we're all about, and that kind of creates this air that it's not okay to be imperfect, and it's not okay to fail, and all of those types of things, which are very suffocating interpersonally. And that's where I think that if we're creating that impression that people, I don't know, oh, you're a Christian, that I think is an indicator on our dashboard, a little indicator light that says we need more salt. We need to connect with people as they are and to love people as they are more, instead of trying to hold people to these impossible standards. And that's my first inclination, is more salt.
More salt. I like that.
I would add real quickly, one of the most profound moments I had as an adult believer was being in a service where a pastor got up and just confessed sins that the church had committed to a particular marginalized group. And then we as pastors were a part of a prayer meeting once where we all just started confessing sins, that things that we have done that have marginalized and harmed people in a specific group. And so I think that there is something about our unique calling as reconcilers to be the ones that go first and say, yeah, I see that, and I'm sorry, and I want to know more about how you've been hurt, instead of us being the ones that when they put the wall up, we put our own kind of wall of like, no, I'm not like that. But like we say, we are broken people, and I see you're hurt, I believe you're hurt, please forgive me. I think that creates an inroad for people to for us to actually like love them and be good towards them, and not just do good things for them.
I love that. You guys hit it out of the park. Thank you both. And so if we are a city on a hill, a light in the darkness, salt that brings out the flavor and the goodness, that has to be done within the confines of covenant, right? Our covenant with the Lord, and then our covenant commitment to one another. And I kind of keep feeling like shalom, peace, plays a part in all of this. And we happen to have the shalom peace expert. She hates it when I call her that. But Osheta, can you just give us a little bit of like how does that play a part in living out this covenantal life relationally versus contractually, doing the right thing, saying the right things?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly feel like for me, I continually say that shalom is us working back to the it is goodness of the garden. Like we are trying to capture that goodness, that vibrancy, that wholeness, that flourishing, that intimacy, And so for me, changing the way I think about engaging with people to like, I am doing this for you, but I am like creating, like I'm being a peacemaker, I'm creating shalom. Like that really makes me think about them. Like I said, like it makes me ask, like, what do you need to feel it is good in your body, in your context, in this moment? And what do you need to feel it like? What do you need to feel it is good between you and God, where you can say it is well with my soul? Like, what do you need? And so I think for me, shalom is that question of saying like, what is missing? Where do you where do you not feel whole? And how can I bring whatever small thing I have to bring you a little bit closer to wholeness, as opposed to thinking like I need to fix you, or it's my job. Like I see like plank in my, like I see this, like really like having conversations and saying like what is going on. And I think in doing that, I mean, we are vice regents, like we are ambassadors of the kingdom of God. And so I think in doing that work, we are actually doing the work, like we're the hands and feet of Jesus. I feel like that's what Jesus did in his ministry. So he looked around and was like, what do you need? Like, let me heal you. Like he really like saw people where they were and was like, let me engage with you in that place. And so I think that that's what shalom or peacemaking looks like for us.
That's beautiful.
That is speaking to me, because I think in the past I've thought too much about how do I fix something instead of what does this person need. And it's like, it's such a subtle thing, and it's so well that said the way you said it, because it's something I need to think more about, because I think that's speaking into something that I need to get better at. Because when you try to fix something for somebody, then suddenly it's like they need me. They need me to help them fix it.
Yeah.
But when you are looking for something that they need, you're assuming that once they get their needs met, they can figure things out on their own. And not necessarily, but like in general, there's just this more trust in them. If once they get their needs, they will be able to thrive. I could still help them and stuff, but it's just it's a very subtle, different kind of assumption about them and me when you think about trying to fix their problems versus trying to meet their needs. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's something that what you said really kind of started me on this path that I need to think more about.
Can I just
love that.
Can I just say this real quick? So I say that, so my book, my upcoming one, I say that the question that drives the book is from Ruby Sells. Like Ruby Sells was a civil rights activist, and she asked, where does it hurt? And I think that if the church can get really good at asking, where does it hurt, more than where's the sin, I think that we will start to do more good for people, or like be good for people, as opposed to like do good for people.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great.
You're preaching it today, Miss Osheta. I love that. And I've always loved that question, where does it hurt? Because that comes from a place, again, of humility, of support, of coming alongside, instead of, let me tell you all the things that you are doing wrong and you need to be getting right? Like, no one wants that. But where does it hurt? And how can we partner with God in tending to that? Oh, that's beautiful kingdom business right there. I love it. I love it. Well, to close this out, Osheta, you had talked about a certain illustration that Beth Leitch shared in her sermon. And so let's talk about that. Like, talk about that stood out to you, and then all of us can reflect on how that has since stood out to us.
Yeah, I really loved her story about how she kind of didn't know if she wanted to be a mom or if she was going to be a good mom, and she went for a walk, and you know how like you walk in the evening and people have their windows open and you can see inside people's houses, and she looked in and she heard like this. She heard like this really happy family, like lots of laughter, and she looked in and she just saw this really beautiful picture of family, and how that settled her, and that gave her like a vision for what motherhood and what family life could look like. And she said, oh, I want that. And I thought it would be good for us as we close. Well, it was Dan's idea to close it this way, but I thought it'd be a good conversation for us about what if we, like, if we looked into the church, where have we in our life, like, looked in and said, and seen something beautiful, some goodness happening, and we thought, oh, that's what I want. Like, I want to be a part of that. Like, that looks like the kingdom to me. So.
Yeah. Well, this was central to my personal conversion into Christianity, because like when I first heard about Christianity and some of the beliefs, I mean, 3 gods, but one God, and that the Bible is divinely inspired, even though it's printed by Zondervan in Michigan. I mean, it's just like that God became a human being, and all of that stuff just seemed preposterous to me when I first heard about those things. But what really captured my imagination and my my spirit was seeing the emotional stability and the joy and the thriving relationships in these families at this church. And I went to this youth group, and I started to get to know some of the kids in this youth group. And so I got to go to their house, and I got to see how these families, how much love they had for one another, and how they built each other up, and how they wanted each other to thrive. And coming from the background that I came from, a very dysfunctional family and lots of problems, and single mom who worked her butt off to kind of make ends meet and all that kind of stuff. And this was just like this revelation, like there really are these families that thrive like this, and they have all this love for one another, and they help each other, and they're all effective at living, and they help each other be effective at living, and a lot of that was founded on their faith. And so really it really was getting a peek inside these other households that said there must be something, as crazy as the Trinity is, there must be something right here, because there's no other explanation for how beautiful this thriving is in these families. And so when I look back at my faith, I immediately think of the families that I first witnessed, and just how their love for one another and their joy sparked this hope in me that maybe there is something more. And so Tara Beth Leitch, that really connected with me as well.
Yeah, I think I have been fortunate because my entree into a relationship with Jesus was because of people reaching out to love me in a very dire, destitute situation as a kid, very, very dysfunctional, again, single mother, abusive men, in our lives. And it was through people's love for me, kind of like a salvation for me, that showed me a picture of who Jesus was. And I responded to that. And so I feel very fortunate that my entry into the kingdom was because of believers being the literal hands and feet of Jesus, and coming into my situation and bringing salvation physically, emotionally, spiritually, all of it. As I've grown in my faith, there have been situations and people and things that try to, like we talked about, mix the salt up, like there have been impurities that have tried to kind of get mixed in there. And when I get discouraged, or I just kind of feel like, what am I a part of? What is happening? Meaning the church as a whole, Christianity as a whole, I always go back to God's people showing God's love, being his hands and feet, and self-sacrificially bringing aid to a young girl who had nothing. And that helps. And to me, when I focus on that, when I focus on the character of Jesus that I've seen in brothers and sisters in Christ, then my faith is again renewed. And I'm like, okay, this is what it's about. That's what I'm a part of. That's what I say yes to. And that's what I soldier on with in this journey.
That's beautiful. And isn't it amazing, the imagery that's used about that Jesus is the light that has come into the world? And then Paul says in Ephesians that we are children of that light. And so when you saw those people extending their hand to help and sacrificing to help, you see the light of God in them. And that's such a beautiful image. And we have the opportunity to be that light too.
I know. And that's what excites me. It's like, man, to be able to be that in this world where it's so needed, that's exciting. How about you, Osheta?
Yeah, so I did not because my mom was not with me during any of my pregnancies or when I delivered. And she was a very private woman. I had no idea what postpartum depression was really. And I didn't know that my mom had experienced it. And so with all three of my children, I experienced it. And with my first, we were just really poor. We were living in an urban neighborhood. And I thought, I'm just sad and stressed because of this, like our life. And then with our second, we had just evacuated New Orleans and moved to Boston. So I was like, I think I'm just sad and stressed because like new baby, all of these things, right? But when my daughter came, 11 months after my second, when my daughter came, I was plunged into like this really deep depression, and I had suicidal ideations, and I just had one day that I was just like so done. And and my husband came home, and like I was like just prepared to like take my life. And so he called our pastor, and our pastor came with the associate pastor, who was a woman, and they both like just sat on the other side of the bath. I had locked myself in the bathroom, and I had a knife in there, and they just sat on the other side of the door, and they prayed and they talked. And I heard my pastor like calling my doctor, and I heard the associate pastor just like telling me you're going to be okay. And I come from a background where we didn't talk, even though my dad's a psychologist, like in the church, you just don't talk about, you don't talk about mental health, because that's it's just demons. Right. But to have these pastors really care about my mental health and walk me through that, for me, that was like, that's a holistic care of a person, because they could have easily just like rebuked demons and told me to get over it, but they didn't. They like really believed me where I was. So.
Osheta, thank you for sharing that. That's, you know, in when I worked in mental health on the psychiatric units, I remember the first postpartum depression patient that I saw, and I feel very ashamed of this, but I assumed that it wasn't really depression. It was just, it's not like a real depression. It's postpartum depression is like something else, you know. But after, you know, 2 or 3 patients, you know, and then hundreds after, I'm of the opinion that I would rather have some type of psychosis or something like schizophrenia even than postpartum depression, because it was easily the most intense, burdensome kind of experience that I saw on the mental health units, and the intensity of the symptoms for postpartum depression were 10 times that of some of these other like major depression and stuff like that. And so I have a lot of empathy for postpartum depression, and thank you for sharing that, because I tell you what, what I experience, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Osheta, from your own experience. But what I experience is that mothers who experience postpartum depression, they feel a lot of shame about their depression because they just had a baby, and they want to show the world that they love their baby. But if they're depressed, that means maybe they don't love the baby, and all of those types of emotions just kind of compound the symptoms that they're experiencing. And so, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, 100%. I would love to talk more. You as being a mental health professional, and me with my story, I think we could have a really great conversation about that. But 100%.
You guys, you know what I love so much about today's show is that we're talking about being a light. We're talking about being set apart. We're talking about being a witness. And part of that, I think we just modeled, is part of that is being real about who we are and what we've been through and what Jesus has brought us through, and not trying to hide those things in shame, but saying, you know, this is what it's about. This is what it means to be in the kingdom and be in covenant, and knowing that God brings us through those things and God is with us in the depths of those things. I think that by sharing that, you guys, that is a part of being the light, because people out there are dealing with stuff. They're going through stuff. And to have 3 pastors talk candidly is huge. As we're talking about being a light, I just think that's really cool. So thank you both for your vulnerability.
Thank you also, Shawna.
Thank you. Yeah. And thank you all for tuning in and being a part of the MuseCast. And we really enjoy diving a little deeper into these sermons and seeing where the discussion leads. And you guys tune in every week, and that is such a blessing. So thank you all for being here with us, and we hope to see you next week. Have an awesome rest of your week. Be well.
Bye, friends.